The controversies surrounding Disney's Snow White remake show that we are still in the thick of the culture wars. And Rachel Zegler, being 23 or whatever she is, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantada is the only global solution.
In 2024, Disney took the decision to give Snow White a new look. On the other hand, rather than focusing on the aspects that made it a timeless classic, they attempted to overhaul the entire thing. The film was transformed into this contemporary, empowered version in which Snow White does not fall in love and does not care about fairy stories. Fans were confused. It was panned by criticals. And dab in the center of all this mayhem came Bill Maher, who is well known for his beliefs that are clear and straight to the point. He intervened and took a level-headed approach to examining the entire scenario. Consequently,
And then they couldn't put dwarfs because this is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
after all of this chaos, Bill Maher went on his show and did what he does best. He calmly, plainly, and without yelling, he broke the problem down. Only reasoning and facts. No ranting, no name-calling, and no spectacular outbursts are necessary. And the point he made was so simple, it's sort of surprising that no one at Disney appeared to get it. Essentially, he argued that Disney's concern with turning everything into a woke statement is having the opposite effect of what it intended. Now, this isn't about whether advancement is good or bad, because Bill Maher has demonstrated he supports social change lots of times. But he made it clear, when you take a simple, delightful fairy tale and turn it into some weird sociological experiment, you don't just lose part of your audience, you lose everybody. Left, right, middle, whatever. Because people don't go to movies like Snow White to hear a sermon or a motivational TED Talk. They travel to get away from it all, to feel good, to indulge in a little bit of nostalgia, and to experience some magic.
I was not a child, so I don't follow that. I don't know fairy tales. I never read comic books. But something is this the one with the poison apple and the what?
Bill Maher didn't rant about cancel culture or abuse Rachel Zegler personally. He didn't need to. He just pointed out how tone-deaf and unnecessary the whole thing was. He reminded everyone that stories like Snow White had lasted for decades because of their simplicity and heart, not because they come packed with social critique. And he's right. You can modernize a movie without entirely shredding what made it amazing. Now, let's talk numbers. This wasn't just a bad weekend. It was a disaster. The movie had a budget of $200 million. That's extraordinary, even for Disney. But when it released, it barely garnered $43 million in its first weekend. Let that sink in, they couldn't even crack $50 million. That's hardly a misstep. That's falling flat on your face in front of everybody. And you could sense the harm directly away. Families didn't show up. Merchandise didn't sell. Theaters were half empty. Disney execs were in full damage control mode, hoping things would magically turn around. But they didn't. It simply kept getting worse. Then came the insider rumors. Nothing official yet, but suspicion started going around that Rachel Zegler might have been covertly sacked from future Disney projects. Again, not confirmed. But would anyone be shocked? After all the social media drama, the terrible publicity, and the low box office, it wouldn't be remarkable if Disney opted to quietly break away from that deal. Studios don't like controversy, especially when it starts costing them real money. And let's be real, those box office statistics don't lie. Industry insiders started leaking bits and pieces, spilling tea about behind-the-scenes dread, and how no one could believe how bad the numbers were. No catchy songs. No fairy tale magic. No enjoyable environment. Just a gigantic, expensive mess that nobody asked for.
Actually, Rachel Zegler, who is the new Snow White, and she's talking about Snow White being woke.
Can you tell us a little bit about your version of Snow White?
Yeah, I mean, Snow White is the girl you remember, but she's definitely made for the modern age, and there's such an emphasis on what it really means to be the fairest of them all. And for Snow White, it's coming to terms with finding herself and finding her inner voice and finding a sense of agency so that she can be a just ruler and a wonderful queen, because there's another one in town.
So, who is Rachel Zegler? She's the actress Disney picked to play Snow White in this big 2024 remake. Now you'd think, if Disney presents you one of their most iconic fairy stories, you'd be excited. You want to honor it, show some affection, maybe even remark how fantastic it is to be part of something so historic. But Rachel came in with this attitude like she was too cool for the whole thing. On her press trip, she actually started trashing the original 1937 Snow White. You can nearly watch her in interviews describing how she never liked the original, how it was odd and didn't make sense to her. And here's the thing. It wasn't just a one-time slip-up or a joke. She echoed that same viewpoint in several interviews. She made it obvious she wants to reinvent Snow White into a modern, independent hero who doesn't need anyone. Now look, nothing wrong with powerful characters. People love that. But if you're rewriting one of the most famous love stories ever told, and you publicly brag about wiping out the love story, how are people meant to get behind that?
Taken back by the they're very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White.
Yeah.
But you're still telling the story of Snow White.
Snow White, yeah.
Seven Dwarfs.
Sure.
So, take a step back and look at what you're doing there. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making the fucking backward story of seven dwarves living in a cave. What the fuck are you doing?
Rachel's statements made it sound like she wasn't proud to be in the movie. Instead, she acted like it was some archaic, embarrassing thing she had to fix. That kind of intensity rubbed a lot of folks the wrong way. It's like being invited to a party and spending the whole night grumbling about the music, the food, and the guests. But let's be fair, Disney did its share of terrible blunders too, and honestly, they might have made the whole matter much worse. While Rachel was calling the story obsolete, Disney was busy demolishing everything people enjoyed about Snow White. The prince? He shifted from being the love interest to some random background extra. They replaced the renowned hymn "Someday My Prince Will Come" with a generic anthem that's supposed to be about Snow White being strong and independent. But honestly, it seems like something you'd hear in the final credits of a Netflix teen drama nobody asked for. The original had charm, magic, and innocence. This one, less about wonder and more about conveying a message. Which, sure, messages are fine. But fairy tales are supposed to be charming escapes, not lectures. Look, no one's against modernizing movies. Things can evolve. New versions might introduce fresh ideas and symbolize new ideals. But there's a tremendous difference between updating something and entirely wiping out what made it special. That's like remaking The Lion King, but determining Simba doesn't need to retake the throne. Rafiki governs the kingdom today. It just wouldn't feel like The Lion King anymore. So certainly, between Rachel's strange, arrogant interviews and Disney's decision to shred the plot, the remake swiftly evolved into something people scarcely recognized. And that's exactly where the problem
Vote for Kamala Harris. And it's actually non-negotiable. Our rights are on the line, folks. Our reproductive rights. Come on. Go vote blue. And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button. I don't need your business. Thanks.
starts. Back in 2022, Peter Dinklage went on a podcast and made a reasonable statement. He basically recommended Disney should be careful with how they handle the dwarf characters. His argument? While it's good to have a Latina protagonist like Snow White, it would be hypocritical to retain feature what he viewed as an archaic picture of dwarves living in a home in the woods. Fair enough. Conversations like that are necessary. But instead of thinking it through, or finding a new method to modernize the characters while keeping their charm, Disney abandoned the dwarfs entirely. Leaked set images started getting around, and honestly, it looked like a low-budget Renaissance fair. It was awkward, cheap-looking, and just plain odd. Everyone was asking the same thing. Who asked for this? Literally nobody wants the dwarfs gone. It was a total miss. And if you thought that was the end of the drama, nope. It got even messier. Around the same time, Rachel Zegler started going off on social media. Not about the movie, nor about the characters, but about politics. Now, whether you agree with her or not, that was not a sensible choice, especially when you're selling a family-friendly Disney movie. It came off really aggressive. And of course, everybody noticed. Megyn Kelly called her out on her show, hitting back at Rachel's comments. And honestly, it wasn't just about her odd views on Snow White. It wasn't just about Disney gutting the dwarfs. It was about Rachel alienating a huge segment of the audience. And that's never a good idea when you're the face of a $200 million movie. But what do you all think? Is Disney finally going to learn from this? Or are we in for more disasters? Drop your take in the comments. And if you liked this video, press that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. We've got more Hollywood train wrecks going your way.